Welcome to the Feed Your Soul with Kim podcast. If you're looking to feel better in your life and want to feed your soul, you are in the right place. Here we believe life doesn't have to be so hard. I'm Kim McLaughlin. I'm your host. I'm a psychotherapist, speaker, coach, and best-selling author. In this podcast, we are talking about my experience on a personal retreat. I'm going to tell you about my 8-day solo retreat, how it helped me rest, reflect, and reconnect to myself. You're going to learn how to plan your own personal retreat that restores calm, reduces burnout, and brings more peace and purpose into your life. You'll discover what makes a personal retreat different from a vacation, how to design a personal retreat that fits your budget and personality, and why solitude and quiet can be deeply healing. You'll hear my personal stories on all of those things and more. Let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Feed Your Soul with Kim podcast. Today, we have something really interesting that we're talking about. We're talking about my experience. Actually, I'm calling this episode Lessons Learned from a Solo Personal Retreat. Last episode, we talked about how and why to take a personal retreat. And this week, I wanted to talk to you about what my experience was because I had one recently. It was really good. It was a really good experience. And I think by me telling you my story of what went into the process of this solo personal retreat, I hope it will encourage you to do something for yourself in the vibe of your own personal retreat. And if you don't, then just kind of keep it on the back burners, maybe something you might want to do later on. So, like I said, we talked about this, about the how and why to do it in our last podcast episode. I'll put it in the show notes. I'll put a link to that episode. And I just kind of want you to think about why you might want to take a personal retreat. I think a personal retreat is a perfect time to figure yourself out, to figure out what's going on, and to really dig a little deeper into yourself. And it can be a getaway that you really just didn't even know that you need. It's not a vacation. I really just want to be really clear. A personal retreat is not a vacation. This is a planned time for self-awareness, for renewal, for personal well-being, for personal growth, for reflection. And it can involve solitude and a disconnect from all of the distractions around us. And it really fosters that deeper awareness and spiritual growth. And also problem solving can really show up. It's really a great tool to have in your toolbox. And I get that it takes more effort than a lot of other things to do, but it is one of my tools. Actually, I don't think I've ever called it a tool, but it's one of the things I do that is really, really helpful to me. So here are some qualities that you can have in your personal retreat. I just kind of want to review this. We talked about this a lot more in depth in the previous episode, but just to kind of get you caught up on some ideas that I think are helpful, is one of the qualities is it's a time alone. It is a time to move off of the quick paced world, to really disconnect from what's going on outside in terms of other people. And I don't think we spend enough time alone. Truthfully, I think many people, myself included, are afraid to be alone. And it isn't like you say, no, I won't be alone, but really get yourself alone for a few days. And it might be kind of hard. I know I've thought about doing like a quiet retreat where for like 3 to 7 days, you literally are quiet and you don't say anything. I've thought about that and I'm not sure I could do that at this point in time. So that's one of the higher level kind, as far as I'm concerned, a higher level kind of personal retreat. I'm talking about a time alone to reflect by yourself, to be more in touch with yourself and to spend time being with yourself. And that, like I said, that can be really hard. It's also a time of purposeful disconnection. It's a time to purposely say, I'm disconnecting from the outside world. And by that, I mean Wi-Fi. I mean on your device, reading things, listening to things, being really connected in a way that we are nowadays. And it can really, disconnection can be so helpful to move off of having that constant distraction. I don't know how else to say it. I think you know what I'm talking about. And I think it takes a lot of time. I think it takes time and effort to get disconnected, and it can be tough. Also, being disconnected in terms of not watching television, not being connected to the outer world can be so beneficial because we're so connected all of the time. So that's one of the things I think of is purposeful disconnection along with time alone can be super valuable. Another thing I think of is having intentional activities. And this is where you're going to retreat to have something happen. It could be it's a quiet retreat where we're not saying anything. It could be a retreat where you're doing something, where maybe you're doing something physical or you're doing some kind of spiritual activities or you're doing journaling or a yoga retreat. There are lots of things you can do, and really leaning into what are the intentional activities, what would you like to do on this retreat, I think is important to start figuring out. Another thing that you can do to lean into a retreat is what kind of setting do you want? I had been wanting to have a retreat, and I really thought about having a solo getaway for my personal retreat. Also, for my retreat, I didn't want to spend a lot of money. I went away for 8 days and 7 nights, and that can get to be costly if you're going to stay in a hotel or you go to a retreat center. It can be costly, and it wasn't something I really wanted to spend a lot of money on, and I didn't want to travel very far. So I had these two requirements that I really wanted to meet in terms of the setting that I would have my personal retreat at. I think also entering into a personal retreat with a sense of the mindset, and I think that leans into a sense of curiosity about what do you want your treat to be like. And it's interesting as I looked reflected on my notes about my retreat, and the before part I wrote a lot, and during I wrote a lot, and after I wrote a lot about what it meant to me. And initially, I wanted to have a goal. I thought if I'm going to go away for 8 days, I should have a goal. I should come away with something specific. And that turned out to be not what happened, or not what I leaned into. That I had a goal. I wanted to like figure things out, and I realized that that was just not a good goal to have. So I really came into it with a mindset of gratitude and joy. And I think that was really helpful for me, is to just be more open to what my retreat would look like. Hi, this is Kim. If this episode touched something in you and you're ready for more support, I'd love to help. Visit feedyoursoultherapy.com to schedule a free consultation. You don't have to do this alone. Help and healing are possible. Over the years, I said a little earlier, over the years, I've been on many retreats. I've been on large retreats. I've been on small retreats. I've been on solo retreats. They've been led by others. The group has led it, or I have done it myself. So there's a lot of ways you can work this out. And once again, I talked about that a lot more in the last podcast. But this was something I had wanted to do for quite a long time. I have a bucket list of 100 things I want to do. And having a solo personal retreat was on my list. It's been on my list for a while. I was really just waiting for the right time and space. There was really nothing going on in my life that made me think I had to. I just had this sense that it was important. So this personal retreat, as you can see, took a bit for me to get organized, just in terms of starting to lean into it. And I was never sure if it was going to happen. I was just waiting. And then I got an invitation. A friend has a 2.4 acre property, which is pretty close by. And she needed her family was going out of country, and they needed somebody to come on property and take care of their dog. And it would be this part that they needed was 8 days and 7 nights. You'd be allowed to stay in the house. It was on a property that's kind of rural, lots of trees, and there was a main house. There's a and a yurt on the property. So I really got the sense that this was going to be a very sacred place for me to go and have a retreat. So they asked me if I could come, or actually they asked for friends if anybody could come. We decided that I would come and take care of the dog on the property. I could have brought my family, but it was really something I wanted to do by myself. And actually, they really didn't want to come. So it really worked out for it being a great place, a great sacred place for this personal retreat that I wanted. Biscuit is the dog, and he became my 8 day companion. He was really by my side a lot of the time. He wasn't intrusive or clingy. He was just had this beautiful, energetic energy. Whenever I would take a walk outside, he would follow me. The property doesn't have like real heavy boundaries. So I was always afraid he'd run off. He did not. He stayed by my side. He was this perfectly beautiful, lovely companion for me the 8 days I was there. So let's talk about what this looked like. So in order to figure, so prior to going, I'm going to back up a little bit. I asked myself really quite a lot of questions to try and figure out how this solo or how this retreat might go. I asked myself some questions. Would I want to work or not? I am a psychotherapist. I've been working virtually, so I could work there or not work there if I wanted to. I also wondered if I would take my family or not. And it became easy because they didn't want to come. They wanted to stay home. They had things happening at the house. So that worked out well. So I could have my solo retreat. And did I want to stay in the house the whole time? Did I want to go shopping? Did I want to go hiking? Did I want to go off the property? Those were some of my questions. And what would I do with myself? Because 8 days is a lot of time to be away from home. And I know these might seem like mundane questions, but in asking myself these questions in advance was my way to really lean into my perfect solo retreat. So if you're ever considering this, I encourage you to have some runway time and time lead in time to start thinking about what you might want to have, what this might be for you in order to feel like you've really taken advantage of the experience. So as I said earlier, I thought I needed a goal to have that. Like in order to take 8 ways away from my family, I thought I need to have a goal. I need to have some outcome that I had. And I really spent a lot of time before the retreat thinking about what my goal would be. What would it look like and what would my outcome be? And I was really thinking a lot about the only way I could allow myself time to get away, time away from my family, time away from the work around the house, that I had to have some kind of outcome, something in the end to show for it. And I couldn't figure out what that was. So I just had to kind of wonder what that would look like. So when I couldn't come up with what the outcome would be, I started thinking about, well, what would I want to do with my time? And for me, my intuition came up. I looked back in my journal to figure out what I had said I wanted to do. And so what would I do with my day? Because 8 days by yourself, what are you going to do? I decided to take daily walk, to do yoga, to do daily meditations, to do daily writing with prompts. I thought I would be more creative and make something. I actually brought a lot of art supplies and I didn't end up doing that. I was well satisfied with all the things I did do. So I didn't do anything creative in the way I'd wanted to. But I also wanted to lean into that idea of taking a social media break. And as I said earlier, that can be one of the outcomes is disconnect from that kind of overly connected world. And that was hard for me. I found it challenging to say that I wouldn't be on social media or to use the Wi-Fi or the internet, but I did less of it. I'm going to just say that part. It felt too hard to do it any other way. So I wasn't sure I could say no social media. So I just said I would have less social media. And that was actually something that I was able to accomplish. I was looking at my journal, as I said earlier, and my journal at the start of my solo personal retreat is today I say yes to new beginnings. Today I say yes to new beginnings. And that felt like such a great way to start it. I decided to lean into this experience as being fun. I wrote, don't focus on the outcome, focus on the fun. That was a game changer. When I said, I don't have to have an outcome, I don't have to have anything to show of this personal retreat, these 8 days away from the house, except that I had a focus on fun. What I said I would ask myself is, am I having fun? Am I having a good time? The voice inside of me said, the way out of failure is to find fun. So the what that meant to me was is that if I'm finding fun, there was no way I was going to fail. That would be the perfect outcome. And that felt really good to me that I would just have fun on this experience. And fun being on a solo retreat, I think looks different than if you're at a party or other things. And it was it was really a way for me to feel like I was going to be successful is I was going to find the fun. I noticed when I entered the house, so I picked up Biscuit and I brought him back to the house. I entered the house. I had never been there. I looked around. It's a beautiful house. And I entered by myself knowing that I'd be there for 8 days. And I thought, actually, I didn't think I felt discomfort. And I wondered if I could do this myself. I wondered if I could be alone in this house with Biscuit for 8 days. I recognized that I had a fear of the quiet. It was very quiet when I walked in. It's a large property. 2.4 acres is a large property. There were trees all over the place. Besides me and Biscuit, there were some chickens on the property. There were lots of birds that would come around, lots of little critters coming in and out. But it was quiet there. So I felt that discomfort of being alone and starting something really new and something really different. So what I decided was I would have some quote unquote rules. My rules for my 8 days would be present, be curious, be honest, be restful, be quiet, be creative, be enjoy, and be mindful. And those made me really become more present to what was going on in at the place and to be there and be more conscious. And I got to say, the first night I felt really alone and I wondered, I literally wrote in my journal, I said, I wonder if I can survive this because it was really a test for me to know whether I could stay 8 days by myself. I really felt that I would lean into that. And what I realized is that I was there to enjoy. And I thought of the idea of enjoy. And that meant to me was to be in the joy. So you can hear this theme coming about of how I was going to be in this retreat. And let me see, a day or so in, I invited my husband to come on the property. He came over for the weekend for a day and a night. I wanted to share this really special place with him to really let him see where I was. And we had a really nice time. We went hiking, really enjoyed the property. Then it was time for him to go home. I found it interesting that I then had nowhere else to go. I had nobody planned to come. I was there by myself. The things I had on my list for the week were I had some psychotherapy clients I was seeing virtually. I had some work related meetings. But other than that, all the things on my list that I wanted to do, I could do at any point in time. I was really on my own to do it my own way. So I used that to-do list to help me feel, maybe to feel successful or to feel like I was getting something done. And that's just kind of my brain was needing something like that. And it was interesting is that as I moved through this retreat, I did get more clarity on issues. I didn't know that that was happen that also can be one of the results of a retreat rather than it wasn't a goal, it was just ended up being a result. And I had some insight into going back into the office. I'm a psychotherapist in California, and I've been seeing my clients virtually for 5 years. And I decided on that retreat that I would rent an office space. And so I actually ended up on the retreat making an appointment. On my way home from the retreat, I stopped off and visited a place, a friend actually who had some room to rent. And I on the spot rented the room. So I made some shifts in my business. I also decided on that retreat to start working towards brain spotting certification. And I started with a consultant while I was on that retreat. It was something that I really felt called to do. And this retreat gave me the space, the inspiration to follow through on it. And I got it started while I was on the retreat. So, what happened for me in the end was my big lesson that I didn't know I needed. I came away with the idea that I want to embrace quiet, to embrace the quiet around me, to embrace a quieter mind. And I didn't know that that would be the outcome at all. Once again, I had talked about wanting to have a goal, and I let go of that idea of goal as I was in joy, as long as I was happy in joy during the time I was there, that was the goal, and that would be enough. It ended where I really embraced the quiet, and it took me a day or so to really crave that quiet in the room. I didn't have the TV on. I actually didn't even have music on. I would just be in the quiet, and that was really successful for me, and I didn't know that I needed that. So in the end, what was in the end what I came away with, let me say that. I came away with this sense of grounding. I came away with a centered feeling, and most of all, my desire for deep quiet. And that was surprising to me. And I take that away now. I embrace it now that I've been away from my retreat. It's been a month or two that I have been back here, but I find that very valuable. It's interesting. I just wanted to tell you a story about what happened at the last night I was there, because I think it's very poignant that this happened on the final night of my retreat around 9 o'clock at night, 9:30 at night. A low flying helicopter started to circle the property, and it would circle the property, go out a few miles, and then circle back around the property. And it was low flying. It was very, very, very loud. And this happened for about 45 minutes. And it really shook my foundation. It literally shook the foundation because it was so loud. And it really I started to feel fearful. And I hadn't felt fearful at all in this retreat. I might have felt discomfort when I first got there trying to get centered in myself. But it was really interesting to me that I started to feel fearful because it was dark outside, and there are trees all around. There aren't neighbors like right next door. They were up the hill and around the corner. I started to feel a little afraid. And what I did, and I think this really became part of my reentry program, my reentry back into the world, because I called my husband and I talked to him, and I talked to him about not feeling safe and what I needed to do. And it felt comforting to talk to him. There was nothing he could do. He was too far away to come in and help. And I set up a plan for if they didn't stop circling, I was going to call the local sheriff and ask if there was something going on, because I felt fearful. That was just an interesting way to re-enter and to go, there was all this noise in the midst of me really craving the quiet. And 99.9% of the time, it was totally quiet, except that last night, as the reentry came, there was that circling helicopter, and it made me think about how I just want more of that quiet. So in the end, my expectations were exceeded. And I think if you ever come into a personal retreat, I think it will be that way because this has been my consistent experience is the retreat always exceeds my expectations. And for me, there was a sense out of burnout and stress relief. And this I talk about in the previous podcast about these are some things that can happen. And it definitely happened for me is there was stress relief. I was able to get more relaxed in my body and I literally felt like my nervous system was better regulated leaving that retreat. And that was a big win. I also had more self awareness and personal growth. I had that personal growth, as I've been talking about, that I want more quiet time. And I actually have been able to consciously make that happen in my life where I take time away and really embrace the time and the quiet away from the noise, away from the television, away from the Wi-Fi. And that has been a huge win. I my personality is I'm an extrovert. I love being out. I love being with people. I love being around talking. And it was interesting to now recognize that I want to need that quiet and that actually is really soothing to me, soothing in a way that I have never recognized before. Another thing that came to me that can be a goal, a win, or a win, I should say, in terms of a personal retreat is problem solving and planning. I made decisions during that retreat. Ideas just came to me on what I could do, how I could effortlessly make some changes in my life that really had some great benefit. I told you one of them was signing off for brain spotting consultation so I can be certified as a brain spotting therapist. Also to engage in having a office space now to do therapy in office. Those were huge wins and things that I've kind of been playing with, but at the retreat, it became very clear that was what I needed to do. And so I was able to follow up on them. And the other thing is reconnection and to reconnect with myself and my desires. It feels like I've come away feeling more purposeful and centered. And that's the best way I can describe what's happened because it's almost like describing the undescribable. And those are some things that I came away with. In the end, I hope that you feel inspired by my experience on my solo personal retreat to really look at one for yourself. So I just wanted to go over in the end to go over some ideas about how you might start setting your personal retreat. Is first set the date, put it on the calendar. Because if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't get done. We always know that. Set the date for it. Set the place. Where is it you'd like to go? What is the place? Is it close or far away? Once again, we talk about this in the previous podcast on personal retreats on how to, but that's a good question. Will you go alone or will you go on a retreat with other people? What will you do? And what are your requirements regarding the costs, the fees, the where is it how far away can you travel? All of those kind of things. And lastly, have a personal retreat plan. What is your plan for it? I actually just talked with somebody earlier today, and I'm going on retreat to Mexico next year. I'm going with a group. It's going to be a guided retreat, and I am so excited because it feels like I'm shooting to the next level, and I'm very excited about it. So in the end, this retreat for me was restful, reflective, and empowering, and it literally was just what I needed. If you're considering doing it, I want to encourage you, just do it. It's can be better than you can expect. And I would love for you in the comments to let us know what you've done or what you plan to do. So this is Kim McLaughlin. This is Feed Your Soul with Kim podcast. Thank you for joining us. Bye. Thank you for joining us on the Feed Your Soul with Kim podcast. We love bringing you fresh content to help you feed your soul. We would appreciate it if you would subscribe and leave a comment about our podcast so others can find us. This podcast is not a replacement for mental health counseling. If you are suffering, seek out a qualified mental health provider. You are worth it.